So far in this unit, we've taken a look at the rise of the corporations and the monopolies and trusts. We haven't taken a look at the worker side of the picture, and that's the subject of today's lesson. Unfortunately, it's not a pretty picture, with long hours, low wages, child labor, dangerous working conditions. Much of the work was done in sweatshops, very small, hot, dark workhouses, mass producing. Here you have a family that's taken work home. This is called piecework, where they're literally paid by the each piece that they complete, which is why they took some of the work home, to try and make a little bit more money. Of course, children were working. 20% of kids aged 10 to 16 were working by 1900. The reason they were working and they weren't in school was because the family needed money, needed them to work. What workers tried to do was organize to better their situation, and the first labor union that developed was the Knights of Labor. It was open to everyone, and by 1885 you had 70,000 workers in it. The American Federation of Labor is actually still around today, and part of the reason is that it was only open to skilled workers. Skilled workers, as opposed to unskilled workers, were much more difficult to replace. As a result, when it came to negotiating, they had more leverage with the employer. And this is how the process works. The process itself was known as collective bargaining. You have the workers negotiate with management. You didn't have all the workers of the factory go into management's office. Instead, you had the union leadership negotiate on behalf of all of the workers. The result was an agreement, the collective bargaining agreement, or the contract that would be signed by both the employer and the workers. The ultimate weapon that workers had was to strike, and there were several strikes in the late 1800s. Often they became violent. This is the Haymarket Square riot, where a protester threw a bomb in the crowd. Employers became suspicious of union activities at this point. The Homestead strike was a Carnegie Steel strike in Homestead, Pennsylvania. And you can see here from the sign that 300 Pinkerton agents attempted to land near here. The state militia is going to be called in to break the strike. Pinkertons were a private security force that were often hired by employers to end strikes. Here you can see an example of the militia coming in to end the strike. That's the state militia. In 1893, railroad workers went on strike. The American Railway Union, led by Eugene V. Debs, went out on strike, basically shutting down the railroads. Ultimately, the U.S. government is going to order the strikers back to work. That's going to lead to a Supreme Court case we'll talk about in the next lesson. So to sum up, workers worked long hours, unsafe conditions, low pay, child labor. Workers tried to better their situation by forming unions. The first two were the Knights of Labor, which took everybody in. The American Federation of Labor took in skilled workers only. They were not particularly effective because often the government sided with the employers against striking workers, forcing the workers to go back to work. So that's it for the early days of workers trying to get what they want. They will have more success when we look a couple of units into the future in the turn of the early 1900s, but in the late 1800s, not such a great situation for workers.